Hello everybody. Today we will discuss the topic of shared content providers in Sitefinity. You all know that Sitefinity uses the concept of providers. In simple words, those are essentially small agents that tell Sitefinity where it should keep its data and where it should um, pull it from. Now, in terms of benefits, this concept gives you great flexibility. And let me show you why. Each of those small self-contained applications in Sitefinity, each of those modules stores its information somewhere in some data repository according to the providers that it works with. For example, by default, all those different types of content are stored into the Sitefinity database. But you can change that to something else if needed. For example, you can change and you can create your own provider which would tell, let's say, the news module to store its data in your third-party custom database that you already have. Now let's revise some of the benefits of that method. Let's say I have this quantum website and I have some pages and so on, and I have some news items inside. And let's say I have another website, which is the Telerik International University website. I would like to have the following scenario. I'd like to have shared news among those two websites so that when I create a news item through one of those websites, I wouldn't have to recreate the same news article in the other, but those would be pulling and storing content in the same location. So I will demonstrate how this works because I have already set up my projects to work that way. So let's say I have that news items here. If I go under news in my education project, I have different news items in there like quantum analysis, an open letter, and so on. I will create really quickly a news item, calling it something trivial like Telerik International University News, and I'll just paste some content off some random Word document that I have. I'll also paste some content here under the summary, and I'll also add a category. Let's create a new one, call it Telerik International University. Okay, and add a couple of tags. TIU tag 1, Greg's tag, and something else. I think that's enough. So let's add these, and let's publish this news item. It appears here. It probably will appear somewhere on my front end. Okay, there it is. Telerik International University News. And this is how it looks here in my Telerik International University website. Now let's check out my other project, the quantum website. Those are my news items that I had so far. Let's just refresh that page. And now we have the Telerik International University News popping up right here. So what I have done is I have configured my two separate instances of Sitefinity to share the same data repository for the news module, and I have also configured those to share categories so I can share taxonomy between my two different projects. Now let's take a look at my settings and how exactly did I do that. I haven't touched my quantum website at all actually. All I did was alter some of the configuration settings here under my education and starter kit, which is the Telerik International University website. Let's go under settings here. There are a couple of things that I did. I went into the data settings here and I disabled the data caching. Now this is the second level caching that Sitefinity provides. It's an advanced caching algorithm which caches information which is stored through open access so that Sitefinity would make fewer database connections. Now this would hardly affect your performance on the front end, so you don't have to worry about your website being slowed down. So I disabled that, and why did I do that? It was because when I do something from one of my websites, the other one has to be informed, and the other one has to refresh its data and to pull that data from the database. If I had the data caching enabled, then it would keep its current data as it is until I restart my application or recycle my application pool, and I wouldn't see the news items that I created through my other projects. So this is one. The second thing I did, I created a new connection string. I called it Quantum, and I actually used the same provider name and so on. I also only specify that this connection string should contact my external website database, and let's see, initial catalog Quantum and so on. This would actually connect to my Quantum database for this website, and it would use its news item storage. That's it. And so this is how I made some initial settings about where Sitefinity would keep its information. Then I configured my news module and its provider. I used the out-of-the-box provider actually, but I added a new parameter. I added a new connection string, which tells the news module that it should start looking for data not in the default database of Sitefinity, but in the database that is accessed through this connection string, through Quantum. Therefore, now my Telerik International University news are being pulled and stored into my Quantum database. And as I mentioned, I also shared my taxonomy, which I did in a similar fashion. I just added some parameters. First, application name, I used the value Quantum, which tells Sitefinity that it should look for the taxonomies in tables where there is a cell named Quantum, which is identifier for whose website my taxonomy belongs to. And I also set a connection string, which tells that Sitefinity should start looking for its taxonomy, in other words, for categories and tags, in the database located where this connection string is pointing to. And this is the result. So now my news articles are stored into my Quantum database, and both my websites are looking for data from there. Let's do the same thing for events. Currently, I have separate events for my Telerik International University website, TIU Scientists, West Coast Energy, Digital Signage Technology Summit. Okay, those are events that are stored in my education website. I have totally different events stored here for my Quantum. Now what I'm going to do is not tell both my projects to look in the same place, but I'll just add an additional provider here under events. I'll do this by going under settings, going under events here. Okay, let's see, providers, open access data provider. I'll just take the same provider type and I'll create a new provider. I'll call it Quantum Events. Quantum Events there. And I'll use the same provider type. So I'm just cloning the default open access data provider here. I'll add a few parameters. Application name, events, that identifies which tables Sitefinity should look for the events. And I'll also create a new parameter called connection string, in which I'll tell my education website to use that connection string for this additional provider. Now what that did is I just added a new provider to my events so that now I'll be able to take events from two separate locations and mesh those up in the same website. So this website will pull events both from its own database and from an external resource. So let's take a look. So going under events, now I see two separate providers. One is the default one with the events that we already saw, and the second one, the quantum events, actually pulls our events from our quantum website. Now let's create a new one. Really quickly, I'm going to again create something trivial. TIU is now interfacing with our quantum website. Let's use the same text here, again a summary as well. Let's publish this, and now if we go to our events here in quantum and we just refresh, now this new event will come up in here. So our quantum website will now display those new events which were created through a totally separate instance of Sitefinity externally. And this is how you can use the power of content providers. You can create those agents and specify where Sitefinity it should store